MercadoLibre is a Latin American juggernaut. They've been able to integrate their e-commerce segment, MercadoLibre, with their fintech segment, Mercado Pago, to build an ecosystem which solves a growing number of headaches for both vendors that sell on the platform and customers alike. They're forecasted to grow at 42% on their top line this year, and the stock is not looking particularly expensive. I think it's a buy here, and I'm going to explain why. Since MercadoLibre went public in 2007, it has absolutely crushed the Nasdaq and the S&P. You can see from this chart, if you had invested at its IPO, you would have made over a 5,000% return on investment. Now, I like to buy great companies at great prices, and it's not the most usual for me to say, oh, I think this company is a compelling buy at these levels when the stock is at all-time highs. Now, the reason for this is MercadoLibre has had very, very sustained growth. Here you can see their annual turnover since 2014, which has increased substantially from 556 million to, on a last 12-month basis, 17 billion. Now, you see this kind of chart for many growth companies, but what's interesting about MercadoLibre is they are now holding a sustained growth rate of around about 40% year on year, even though for this year they're forecasted to make 20 billion in revenue. This is an extremely fast growth rate and not one often seen by large companies these days. Now, it's quite common to find 10 to 15% growth on the top line amongst most of the Magnificent Seven names, for example, Microsoft, Alphabet, or Amazon, or maybe if you go a bit further down the tech portfolio to smaller market caps like Intuit or Adobe. But it's very rare to find a company with a market cap of 100 billion growing their top line at 40% per year. What I've done here is I have filtered for all of the companies in the New York Stock Exchange that have produced annualized turnover growth over the last 3 years of at least 20% and are also forecasted to post annualized turnover growth of at least 20% over the next 3 years. Now, what we can see, we've got Nvidia and AMD, some of the chip stocks. You've got ServiceNow, big tech, and then you've got a few e-commerce companies, Pinduoduo and Shopify. And you can see from the ratios here, MercadoLibre is trading very cheap on a market cap to gross profit basis. Note the market cap to gross profit ratio is incorrect for Pinduoduo because they report in Chinese yen, but their market cap's in US dollars. So that's actually caused that ratio a bit of skew, and that should be closer to 7. But you can see here, MercadoLibre trading at 14 times gross and 34 times next year's free cash flow compared to most of the other companies that are large cap, which will give you this kind of growth. And some of them will give you slower growth than MercadoLibre that are actually trading at much larger premiums. On the one hand, you can look at this as the market offering a discount for a company which has its majority revenue exposure to South America, somewhere that is not as politically stable as the United States or maybe Western Europe, where a lot of other of these companies make the majority of their revenue. On the other hand, you can look at it as a South American conglomerate that has positioned itself in the perfect position to take advantage of the same types of economics that Amazon has done in much of the developed world. Here we can see MercadoLibre's presence by country, and we can see that most of their revenue are derived from either Brazil, Argentina, or Mexico. Now, Argentina has had a bit of a hump because they've had a really, really bad economic situation with rampant inflation. And actually, MercadoLibre has been growing a lot in Argentine pesos, but unfortunately, in US dollar terms, because the peso has lost so much value, they have been not able to really grow properly on a net basis in Argentina. Now, what we can see is that whilst other countries are growing nicely at 36%, these three countries make up the majority of the revenue. Now, what we want to think about is how much room do MercadoLibre have to grow? And what I thought would be interesting is to actually compare it to how much Amazon are making in certain countries. So you can see for Amazon's 2023 financial statement, they generated net sales of 353 billion. That's absolutely crazy in North America. So this is excluding anything outside of North America, and it's also excluding AWS. So it includes other things for Amazon as well that they've sort of integrated within their ecosystem. It includes things like Prime TV. It includes things like Amazon advertising, Audible, these kind of things within the ecosystem that MercadoLibre also has the potential to do within South America. Now, if you add up MercadoLibre's revenue for these three countries, Brazil, Argentina, and Mexico, and if you add up Amazon's North America segment, which I'm assuming is US, Canada, and Mexico, we're getting 352 billion for Amazon and 8 billion for MercadoLibre. If you compare that of the GDPs of these respective countries, 30 trillion for Amazon's North America and only 4 trillion for MercadoLibre's South American countries, you still get a GDP to revenue multiple of over 5 times for MercadoLibre relative to Amazon. And, when this multiple is only 86 times Amazon's revenue, which is actually pretty crazy. Like, that's not a particularly high multiple, considering that like Amazon's revenue from these countries is almost 1% of their GDP. It's crazy. They're still growing this segment at 12% year on year. So this is just one back of the napkin calculation to show that there is a lot of total addressable market still to remain within MercadoLibre's segment. And I mentioned this before, they are solving a growing number of headaches for consumers. Now, let me give you a few examples. Brazil in particular is a very logistically difficult place to deliver parcels, right? Look at the country's infrastructure. It has a few big cities, right? But it has incredibly vast areas of rural Brazil as well. The post office is notorious for being very inefficient, and MercadoLibre have built a vast delivery network to optimize the efficiency of delivery. They also have Mercado Pago, which whenever someone is selling on MercadoLibre, they are credited in a Mercado Pago account. This allows MercadoLibre to upsell certain products within Mercado Pago, for example, business loans and financial management. They also offer advertising to businesses in the same way that Amazon does, so businesses can pay to get their particular products higher and higher up the MercadoLibre page. Now, on the consumer side, they are building the same kind of ecosystem which will ingrain switching costs for the customer and continue to add value to their shopping experience. So they do offer MercadoLibre credit where consumers can buy now and pay later. And they also offer a service where if you're unbanked in South America, as many people are, you can actually do a cash payment. Even though it's online, you've got your barcode and you can go to a shop and you can pay with that shop in cash and they will verify the item has been paid for, and then you can still get a delivery with MercadoLibre. So both on the vendor side and on the consumer side, they are expanding to solve a wider and wider array of problems and have a one-stop solution for both the seller and the consumer, the same that Amazon has done in North America. This also creates a network effect whereby the more vendors that are on MercadoLibre's platform, there is a greater choice of items, and the probability that you'll find something that exactly suits your needs is much higher, right? The more customers want to go on their platform, and the same goes vice versa, right? Vendors want to sell on there because they're going to more consumers and eyeballs available to potentially buy their product. Being a one-stop solution for both the vendor and the consumer also cements you as having a powerful brand within the countries that you operate in, the same way that Amazon has done in the Western world. Now, this begs the question, what about MercadoLibre versus Amazon? Because Amazon have been aggressively expanding into South America. Now, the truth be told, there is a lot of data and statistics that all show different things, and it's very difficult to actually get an accurate picture of how well Amazon are doing within South America. But what I can tell you is that MercadoLibre keeps reporting fantastic results. And this is showing that they're growing not only in one country, but they're growing across multiple countries, and they're growing their commerce and their fintech divisions very, very nicely. If you look at the Brazil revenue, they've had a nice uptrend. Argentina revenue, again, it stagnated a little bit recently because Argentina have had those economic problems. Mexico doing very, very well, and total revenue by geography, obviously that's the overall revenue and it's going up very well. The same on commerce versus fintech. They have grown their commerce segment extremely fast and their fintech segment extremely fast. But we will see. What you need to look at is if there's been a notable slowdown in MercadoLibre's growth rates for Amazon to be able to entrench itself. But what I'll say is MercadoLibre is a founder-led business. The founder has been there since the start in 1999 for 25 years. He owns 8% of the company and he's managed to get MercadoLibre this far, still growing at these rates. And these rates are not a fluke where one country is doubling and it's pulling everything up. Again, go back to this table. They're growing all of these segments consistently in pretty much everywhere apart from Argentina at very, very fast rates. So this is a company that clearly has some advantage. It has some sort of superior return that keeps people coming back and keeps them growing this much, because Amazon's been trying to get into South America since 2017 and it's still not disrupted these extremely fast growth rates. And actually, if you look at the growth rates by year, this is what I really, really like to see. Now, within the pandemic, we grew very, very fast and it peaked at 78% in December of 2021. Now, that's obviously come down a bit and also the company has continued to scale. But look at this, for the past sort of 4 years, they've been in this 37 to 45% range and they've forecasted quite an uptick from last year's 37.4% growth to this year's 42.4% growth. So they're posting some very, very impressive numbers here. What's interesting as well is I compared some of the top e-commerce companies in the world, because this is what's interesting is like Amazon has had success in some places. It's not had such success in other places. It's had a lot of success disrupting what few big online retailers we had in Western Europe. And it also had a lot of success disrupting Flipkart in India. Now, when it did disrupt Flipkart though, it was only 6 years old. Meanwhile, MercadoLibre was founded in 1999 and is still growing incredibly strong. And remember, there are other markets that Amazon has not been disrupting particularly well. For example, in China, companies like Alibaba and Pinduoduo remain a dominant force. It's also very much struggled to disrupt the massive, massive market in Southeast Asia, where Sea Limited is the winner. So there are some places that Amazon has been able to disrupt and other places that it hasn't. But it's very clear from the data that we've got, the MercadoLibre is still growing extremely, extremely strong. Now, what we can see here is these are the Moat ratings from Morningstar, a company that is famous for doing deep dives on competitive advantages and working out if these companies can generate excess returns on capital in the long term. That is what their definition of an economic moat is. Now, for all of these big e-commerce plays, these are the big ones that are public companies and that Morningstar regularly report on. They all have some level of moat, but MercadoLibre is actually the only one that Morningstar have given them a wide moat, but they're saying the moat trend is positive, meaning that they actually reckon the moat is getting even wider. So this is something that we really, really like to see. We can see they think Alibaba's moat is eroding away. Amazon, they think Amazon is stable. I mean, how much wider can Amazon's moat get? But MercadoLibre, they're saying actually this company is the only one of these 6 that we will give recognition to, that although it's already got a wide moat, they are working on building it even more. And they mention the moat around switching costs, which I went through network effect, which I went through, and also through their intangible assets. I like the fact that MercadoLibre is continuing to innovate as well. On the most recent quarter, they said they already have 100 robots deployed, which is helping to automate the delivery process. And by the end of the year, they said they will be up to 300. This is a company where it's very clear that the management, the founder, and the whole culture at the company is about extremely fast innovation. They also have a MELI Plus membership, which is being rolled out and expanded throughout South America, which will act in a similar way to Amazon Prime. Because MercadoLibre is continuously making large capex investments, it's better to value the company relative to its past on the top line. Now, what we can see here is like, despite the share price being at all-time highs, it has grown so fast that if the share price does not keep up with this 40% revenue and gross margin growth, the valuation multiples continue to contract. And now you're getting a very, very good deal for MercadoLibre. We can see here, they have a price to gross profit ratio of 11 and a price to sales ratio of just 6. Now, this is actually around the same, or if not even marginally lower than where it was trading at in most of 2016. Now, throughout these years, 2015 to 2017, they had a couple of years of 17% growth, and then they had a year of 29% growth. Now their growth rates are stable at around 40%, and you're actually getting a better multiple. So you're getting faster growth and actually pretty much the cheapest multiples in the company's history. And, this is because, as I said, the share price has to keep up with 40% ROI. And it had a couple of years of, it crashed and then it came back up. And over the past couple of years, it's sort of gone sideways a little bit. But actually, the growth rates have been very, very sustained. I think what's happened is similar to Amazon in the Western world, but exaggerated in South America. Throughout COVID, when the shops closed, there were a lot of people that were exposed to e-commerce for the first time online, right? Brazil does not have as high a penetration of this as the United States. But I think what's happened is a lot of them have stuck online, and the transition from the legacy way of doing things to the new way of doing things is clearly extremely fast in South America. And a fantastic company like MercadoLibre is a great way to play this. So that is my thoughts on this company. The shares, I think, are a good buy at this price. I mentioned in the previous video that I think the stock market is a little bit overvalued. It'll be interesting because MercadoLibre is typically more volatile than the market, being what is at the end of the day quite a cyclical company. And if the share price gets pulled down and they're able to sustain their growth rates, this could make the company extremely cheap. However, even though they're all-time highs, the share price has not kept up with 40% growth. They're trading at 34 times next year's cash flow, even though they're making significant investments. And Morningstar rates the moat that they've built as they integrate and have a greater and greater vertical within their MercadoLibre and Mercado Pago platforms. I hope you guys enjoyed the video.